It has been a rough 24 hours for the city of Houston in terms of sports. The Houston Texans with a very rough day yesterday, but more than anything else, what has happened today with the Houston Astros, a massive punishment handed down by Major League Baseball. Mike Leslie and Sean Giggy here with you on WFAA Facebook Live to talk about this a little bit, break it down a little bit, because this is a huge, huge development for Major League Baseball in general, trying to very clearly lay down the law and make it abundantly clear that this is not to be tolerated. The Astros suspended their general manager, Jeff Luhnow, and their manager, AJ Hinchs. Both were suspended for a year for electronic sign stealing, and then since that was handed down by Major League Baseball, the owner, Jim Crane, of the Astros has since dismissed both of them, fired both of them, just a matter of maybe a half an hour after this all broke. Big development, obviously, for a team in the Rangers division that has had a tremendous amount of success the last couple of years, but a lot of people are now asking how and why.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions a lot of people are wondering, and I did it first, was why no players? Because the report has said that this was, well, it said that, first off, that Hinch claims that he was unaware of it, he did not participate, he didn't know about it. And we know he even took a bat to the monitor because he was, to show his anger about it. And then Luhnow, the GM, it says in the report that he had no knowledge of it at all. So the question, and that it was entirely player driven, and the players knew what was going on. So I guess one of the big questions is why were none of the players caught up in this? And I think. Whether I agree with it or not, or whether the viewers agree with it or not, I think I saw, I think it was Tom Hadgecourt, who covers Major League Baseball. He said that the players, since they're part of a union, they can file grievances, and this can last months and years, and that Commissioner Manfred just kind of wants to get this over with and move past it and just show that cheating is not going to be tolerated. So I think that's probably part of the reason that players, weren't punished. Plus, Manfred says in his report that, it would be, hard to determine what players had what involvement, and plus they've spread out to various teams now, so it would be hard to kind of deliver the proper punishment, but instead just give it to the guys who are supposed to be making sure that those players aren't doing that.
There was a mention in some of the reporting from Jeff Passan, who's one of the gentlemen who broke the story, about Carlos Beltran, who was a player on that Astros team, now is the manager of the New York Mets. It sounds like he's not going to be punished because his infractions happened as a player and now he's a manager. For whatever reason, Major League Baseball has decided to divorce those two entities from one another and decide that he's going to be allowed to continue on as Mets manager and without any punishment in that regard. Alex Cora, though, who was part of that Astros staff back in 2017 when they did win the World Series, and that's another element of all of this, is whether or not they should be stripped of that World Series title. Clearly, Major League Baseball has decided that that's not what's going to happen, but we'll leave it up to you guys whether or not you think that should be the case. But Alex Cora likely to see some punishment as well. That hasn't been meted out just yet, but it figures to be very harsh.
Well, and then the Red Sox win the World Series in 2018. Yeah. Alex Cora is the manager now there. He seems to be the one that this all comes back to. But yeah, that investigation with Cora and the Red Sox is still going on. I'm just curious to see. I think everybody's just shocked today that Crane went ahead and fired Hinch and Luhnow. I'm curious to see if all this that transpired today, and knowing that Cora is right in the middle of it, if the Red Sox try and get out in front of it, and if they dump Cora before the MLB even finishes that investigation. That'll be curious for me to see.
Peter Crabtree saying in the comments here on Facebook that they should forfeit their World Series and give it to the Dodgers. Just to kind of give you guys, in case you haven't seen some of the videos that break down exactly what the Astros were doing, it was electronically based, but it was also somewhat rudimentary in how they communicated between each other, from the dugout to the batter in the batter's box. It was sign stealing, because I'm seeing a couple of questions, asking what is sign stealing, what were they doing? So let's just kind of break down exactly what was happening. They had a camera trained from behind the pitcher where you could see the catcher's signals to the pitcher that was then viewed in the clubhouse or in the dugout. And if a breaking ball sign was given, they would bang sometimes on a trash can, sometimes on some sort of banging was made so that the batter in the batter's box knew a breaking ball was coming. If he didn't hear a bang, he knew it was going to be a fastball. If he heard a bang, he knew a breaking ball was coming. That's kind of the basics of what they were doing. And if you go to, I'm trying to think of John Boy, who's got a very popular Twitter account, he kind of broke it down in full detail and showed exactly they did this, they did this, they did this. And that's basically the long and short of it. The video camera, the communication from the dugout with the banging, and the differentiation between will it be a breaking pitch or will it be a fastball. That's the long and short of what they did, and some people wonder if that's why they were as successful as they were over the course of that stretch, and that's what's leading to some people in our comments saying here that they should give away their 2017 World Series championship.
And if anyone doesn't follow baseball closely and is wondering, when these guys are an elite level, so when they know what pitch is coming, a breaking ball is going to move, it's going to cut down, a curveball is going to move a certain way, a slider is going to move a certain way, a cut fastball. When you're at that elite level, when that's the pitch, it's going to move this way, how fast it's going to come. I was a terrible hitter when I played baseball when I was younger, so that information still wouldn't have helped me any. But these guys, it helps a lot offensively when you're doing that. And obviously the Astros had a great season. Personally, I don't think they needed it. I don't know that it helped any, which begs the question, why are they doing it? They had elite talent on that team.
I think if it didn't help any, they wouldn't do it. I think it helps. It has to help, because otherwise, because like you're saying, if you're an elite level, if you're Carlos Correa, and you're essentially told before the pitch it's going to be a fastball, wave goodbye to the baseball. Yeah. I think it absolutely helps. Whether or not they deserve to have their World Series championship stripped away from them, I'm not sure that I'm ready to go quite that far, but punishment absolutely had to be handed down by Major League Baseball, and they've very clearly done that.
I guess here's the question. How much do we believe the players? Because just scanning through the report, I haven't read every single word, but I scanned through as quickly as I could through this report, and I think a lot of the players said that it was more of a distraction than anything, and they claimed it didn't help much. Whether we believed them or not, but they said it was a distraction. And in the back of their minds, they always knew, it says in here somewhere that they knew it was wrong, and that it wasn't right, and they were afraid of getting caught by other teams. And there was one game against the White Sox, so I can't remember the White Sox pitcher, but they thought he was catching on. And so they kept a monitor in the dugout hallway that showed that camera angle, and they'd have somebody in the dugout hallway watching that monitor. Well, they went and ripped that monitor down as soon as the game was over and went and hid it, because they were worried the White Sox were catching on. So the players just had this sense of like, we don't want to get caught, but supposedly claimed that it was more distracting than anything, if we want to believe that.
Right. I'm not sure I believe that they thought it was distracting, because again, if it didn't help, then somebody would have said, guys, let's stop doing this. It's not making any difference. Instead, they went and won the World Series. So, Colleen McThompson saying in the comments here, no one knows exactly how a pitch will come across the plate. Of course. Obviously the pitcher still has to throw the pitch. But if you're told it's going to be a fastball, yes, you don't know where in the zone that pitch is going to be located, but if you're a major league level hitter and you're told it's going to be a fastball, you then know that pitch isn't going to break. So when you see the ball released from the pitcher's hand and it's going to that spot, it's going to stay going to that spot, by and large. That's an oversimplification, but as opposed to if you don't know whether it's a fastball or a breaking pitch out of the pitcher's hand, you may think it's a fastball, turns out it's a changeup, and it falls off the table and you swing over the top of it. That's part of the innate battle between pitcher and hitter. So yes, believe me, it makes a difference for them to know that as opposed to not knowing that as it's quote unquote supposed to be. Now, some people will say that sign stealing's been going on forever. Yeah, pretty much. Not always has it been electronic, and that's what it specifically says in the statement from the commissioner, electronic sign stealing. I think there's a certain element of gamesmanship and understanding across baseball at all levels, high school, pee-wee, little league, any of it, straight on through minor league baseball and major league baseball, there's an understanding that everybody's trying to find that edge. If it's done within the confines of the field, and you've got a guy standing on second base that is able to kind of catch a glance at what the pitch is going to be and somehow communicate that to the batter, there's an element of inevitability to that. There's an element of how do you really legislate that out of the game that is tough for any level of baseball to legislate. But something like this where it's an electronic thing and you're banging on trash cans from the dugout, that to me feels different. And very clearly it feels different to Major League Baseball too, because they wouldn't have hammered the Astros the way that they did.
Well, I think more than anything, obviously, as you said, that for a long time, teams, if they see it, they can sneak, hey, this is the pitch that's coming. But the electronic way of doing it, which enhances, it makes the cheating easier, makes the sign stealing easier. Not that it's right one way or the other, but I think more than anything, this is just a message from the commissioner that this is not tolerated. Because I don't know. I used to, be sports anchor reporter like you, so I don't follow as closely anymore now that I'm not in this world anymore. So I'll get more of your opinion on this. Do you think this is something that basically ends the careers of AJ Hinch and Jeff Luhnow? Or do you think they can come back? Do you think Hinch can be a manager again? Or do you think it's...
Yeah, I don't think it ends. I mean, if this had happened 20, 30 years ago, which again, technology was different there, maybe it wouldn't have been possible 20, 30 years ago, but just for the purposes of my point, if this had happened 20, 30 years ago, yeah, probably. That may have been the end of their career. Our attention spans are so damn short. I think, this will be a big deal for today and tomorrow, and it'll be a big deal when the Astros play their season opener, and it'll be a big deal if the Astros make the playoffs this year, and it'll be a big deal for, in key spots for about a year or so. And then it's going to go away, and it's going to be forgotten, and their suspension is a year. So just the fact that they were fired by the Astros owner, Jim Crane, who, by the way, it's worth noting, it was explicitly pointed out in the statement from Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred that he did not have any knowledge of it. It says the investigation revealed absolutely no evidence that Jim Crane, the owner of the Astros, was aware of any of the conduct described in this report. That's an important element because otherwise you imagine punishment would have been handed down to Crane as well. But the fact that Crane fired these two, Luhnow and AJ Hinch, doesn't mean that those suspensions go away. They're still suspended for a year. They're not going to be allowed to go sign with some other team. But a year from now, they will be. And whether it's a year from now or if it's 2 years from now, if it takes a little bit of time, it may take a minute. But no, I think they'll come back.
Well, because that's what I wonder is, I said I think it sends a message to not do this. But if you can do this, even though Hinch and Luhnow supposedly didn't know, if you can do this and then a year later come back to the game and manage another team, then how much is it deterring people from doing it in the future?
I don't know.
It's not costing
a
their
year
career.
away from the game and the shame that is associated with this right now.
You say shame, but like you said, we have short attention spans. We look at Sean Payton from the Saints, that bounty gate. He was suspended a year, and
Saints waited it out, and he came back.
Nobody remembers that, and I think Sean Payton is one of the most admired coaches by fans and everybody alike, even though he was so. But
I think in the moment it was shame for him. I think people are allowed to recover from making mistakes, and Sean Payton I think fits into that category, and both Jeff Luhnow and AJ Hinch, Jeff Luhnow rather, and AJ Hinch will have the opportunity at some point in the future to recover from this mistake. Right now, I think it's apropos that they sit in this moment and that there is a certain level of shame that is attached to it, but I don't think that needs to be a permanent thing. I do think they come back eventually.
Do you think the 2017 World Series championship in the Astros, do you put an asterisk on that now?
I think that's probably the fair way to do it. I don't know that you take it away altogether. I've never been a big fan of like the NCAA comes in and they'll just strip wins away and strip away Final Four appearances and strip away national championships, and that's not reality. We all know what happened. We all saw it happen. That Astros-Dodgers World Series, as tainted as it may be after this, as questionable as, at the very least, as it may be in all our minds after this, we all still watched it happen, and it was a heck of a World Series. Like, that doesn't just disappear from our minds, just like national championships for, I'm trying to, what's a good example? I think Memphis had their national championship stripped from when John Calipari was the head coach there. UMass had a Final Four stripped when Calipari was there. Like, those kinds of having the NCAA just like rip those things away, we all saw it happen. Like, it doesn't just disappear into thin air. It still happened. You want to put an asterisk next to it and say, hey, this team was then punished years down the line because we found out that they did X, Y, and Z, just to have that notation so that everybody remembers, like, hey, this happened and it wasn't okay? Sure. But stripping it away, no, we all saw it happen. The Astros beat the Dodgers in 2017. It is what it is. There's no changing that now. We're not rewriting history.
Well, the thing is, they were still a very talented team.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at this past year, 2019. Supposedly, it wasn't going on this past year. Nobody could hear trash can bangings. You know, there wasn't anything reportedly going on this past year. They'd ceased the sign stealing, and they still made it to the World Series, and quite frankly, should have won it, if not for a great series from the Nationals. But so I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I would say I think I'm on board with you of, you know, marking that asterisk there, but not stripping that title.
This is where it gets a little bit comical to me, is the rivalry between Dallas and Houston. Adela Gonzalez, who I can only assume, one, she's watching a WFAA live stream, two, her comment, that she must live somewhere in the DFW Metroplex, because she says that's why Houston is called the armpit of Texas. Now they're cheaters too, LOL, hashtag sorry not sorry. Those are Adela's words, not ours, just to point that out. Let's see what other Oscar, and maybe the funniest comment that I've seen so far today says that the Texans should have cheated yesterday.
I don't know if that would help.
Let's see what else. Monica Valdez says you still have to hit the ball. Listen, yes, but it's about degrees of difficulty. It's very difficult. You'll hear many athletes across multiple sports tell you that maybe the hardest thing to do in all of professional sports is hit a baseball. Doesn't matter if they play football or basketball or hockey or anything along those lines. They'll tell you that hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do. If you don't know what pitch is coming, it's really hard. If you know what pitch is coming, it's a little easier.
If you want proof that hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do, go to Putt-Putt or one of your local rec centers, hop in that 60-mile-an-hour, 70-mile-an-hour cage. I haven't played baseball in a while, and you hop in there, you realize how rusty you are, how terrible you are. Those pitches are coming right down the middle, too. They ain't moving. They're coming. And just at 70 miles an hour, those are hard to pitch, to hit. So you imagine a 90-mile-an-hour ball coming at you, moving in all funky ways, just being tipped off a little bit and knowing roughly the general area it's going to be. Yeah, that makes a world of difference.
Now, this is a fair point from David Hernandez. He says, all the teams have a camera from center field aimed at the pitcher and catcher. Now, I think what you're probably thinking of is the broadcast camera, which is true. I mean, watch any baseball broadcast, and that's the angle that you're going to see more than any other camera angle in the entire, over the course of a 3.5-hour baseball broadcast. He says how many more teams were doing the same thing as the Astros. It's a fair question. I'm not sure that it's quite fair to say that every team has the exact same setup that the Astros apparently had, according to this report from Major League Baseball. But they probably all at least could have the avenue to do exactly what you're saying and follow along this same path as the Astros. Chances are good they weren't the only team doing it. But they're the team that got caught. They're the team that is, that had their hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, and that is getting hammered with these punishments. But that is, as much as it is an effort, I'm sure, by Rob Manfred to say to the Astros, don't you ever do this again, it is also very much a statement to every team across Major League Baseball. Don't you get caught either, because this will happen to you, or worse.
Well, hopefully it's not a statement, don't get caught. It's hopefully a statement, don't do it.
It's a fair point.
That's what I was going to say. It's a fair question.
Don't do it,
That's a fair question from David, that how many other teams are doing it. You know, the probability is probably high that other teams have at least attempted to do it. Whether they did it to the extent as the Astros, we don't know. But I think now those teams are like, they're going tear down that monitor, hide that video replay room, get rid of it entirely. Hopefully, if somebody else was doing it, this ceases that entirely, because I mean, this is $5 million is the biggest punishment that financially that the MLB can dole out. But then suspending the coach and the GM for a year, unpaid, and now obviously they're fired. I mean,
and in addition to that, I don't know if we even mentioned it, they lose draft picks, first and second round picks in 2020 and 2021 as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Which that's extremely valuable. You look at how the Astros have built their team over the past 5-6 years. I mean, it's Sports Illustrated in whatever it was, 2013, which claimed World Series champs 2017 because of the talent that they had drafted and built up. Losing first and second round draft picks, I mean, that's where you find the gems in baseball. And so that can be just as damaging as anything else. I
think this point from David Tanner is unfortunate, but also on point for this particular conversation. He says, I think cheating occurs in all pro sports, and that's why we don't watch any of it. I'm assuming we must mean the Tanner family. I'm not sure. Personally, I haven't made that decision, but I can understand how and why certain people might. You look at situations like this, and baseball has probably had the most conflicted relationship with the idea of cheating of any of the major pro sports, going back to the steroid era, going back to corked bats, going back to take your pick. And you look at the viewership cratering, there's validity to it. It makes you wonder, is this why people aren't watching as much as they did in years past? There are other issues as well, pace of play. There are a lot of different things that baseball needs to change, and there are a lot of things that other sports league, I mean, it's not just Major League Baseball, but again, I think if you were to pick one league that has had the biggest, the most frequent issues with some form of cheating, I think it's baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, I may be speaking out of turn. I didn't exactly do an exhaustive search on that before we started here, but just off of my own memory, off of my own memory, I think that's fair to say that baseball's had this problem more than any other sport. And some of that may be because the sport lends itself to that, but even, Tom Brady and Deflategate, or, the Patriots have had their fair share of issues over the course of the last 20 years as they've won 6 championships, and none of those have been taken away. Other sports do have these issues as well, and it's a question as to whether or not it hurts the integrity of these sports and people's interest in watching.
But forgive me, this may be a bit of a reach here, but I feel like there's cheating at any level. I mean, you see parents and coaches sometimes at peewee levels that are trying to do stuff, high school levels that are recruiting kids from other districts to come there, and then it's a shady move. Well, this kid doesn't live in that district. Why is he playing at that school? And why? I don't know if it's falsifying grade reports to make a kid eligible, whether it's high school or college. There's cheating at every level. But sports are meant to be entertaining. They're meant to entertain us, to make us escape from the daily. I mean, you see how awful the news is on a daily basis. Sorry, guys. But you see how bad the news is on a daily basis, and you want to get away from it. And sports allows that escape for you to have fun, enjoy time with friends, see just what humans at their best are capable of, because athletes are incredible. I mean, do you get annoyed and frustrated at the cheating? Yes, but I think the majority of people, whether they're peewee, high school, college, professional, these are guys and girls that just love playing the game, and they just love doing it. Obviously, younger they are, they're not getting paid, they're doing it for the love of the game, but there are dirty people out there that will try to cheat because winning is what matters to them. But for the athletes, I mentioned Sean Payton earlier. It's funny because I had just watched the other day the short documentary that ESPN did the year he was out of the league, and he coached Pee Wee football in Springtown, or he coached against Springtown, and that was the one team he couldn't beat was Springtown when he was coaching Pee Wee, his son's Pee Wee football team here. And he was talking to those kids who I think were sixth graders at the time, talking about how this was the best year of his coaching career, coaching sixth graders. And this guy's a Super Bowl champion coach. And it's because he did it for the love of the game and just to see their passion. And I think that's what should make you enjoy sports, is seeing people who love it and excel at it. It shouldn't, your hatred for the cheating shouldn't overrule and overweigh the fact that there are a lot of people that are doing it the right way and that love doing it the right way and just competing.
The quote that is coming to my mind, that I had to look it up to make sure that I get it right here for you guys, from Earl Warren, the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the U.S. He says, "I always turn to the sports section first. The sports page records people's accomplishments. The front page has nothing but man's failures," kind of dovetailing off of your point about how distressing the news can sometimes be. The unfortunate thing is, as true and as accurate as that may have been in 1968, I'm not sure how true it is anymore. I mean, there's still an element of that, obviously. In 3 hours, we're all going to be turning on the national championship game and enjoying LSU and Clemson and the successes of that moment for one of these two football teams. So it is still true in some form or fashion. But these kinds of stories are far too frequent.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. It's disappointing, because I don't think that's what you got into this business to cover when you were doing sports. It's certainly not what I got into this business to. I mean, we're not here to cover. We are here to cover it. We don't want to be covering these kinds of stories. We want to be covering frankly, the fun stuff. There's a reason why the sports department is always called the sandbox of the newsroom. That's the stuff that we enjoy covering. This stuff is disappointing. It's frustrating, and it's harmful to the integrity of the sports.
Well, yeah. When I graduated college, I got into this business to do what you're currently doing, was just to cover sports, to tell sports stories. Because, I mean, there's so many stories of triumph over tragedy in sports. You look at Shaquem Griffin, who plays for the Seahawks, just with one hand. It's stories like that inspire you and stuff. And that's what I got into the business to do, and cover these sports. And I worked in Waco before this, and the tail, as I was kind of phasing out and moving away, is when kind of that all started imploding.
Right.
And that's not what you want to cover. Nobody enjoys that stuff happening or wants to cover it. And there's a reason now, my job now, obviously I'm no longer doing sports full time, but there's a reason now I tell features. I tell fun stories and fluff stories. I don't want to deal with the crime and the other stuff that frustrates you. But I mean, and you always hope that it's not your team. Like, Rangers fans are probably breathing a sigh of relief. We didn't get caught,
I'm sure there's a segment of Rangers fans that are elated by this, with the rivalry between the two teams. There's probably also a segment of Rangers fans that is frustrated by this because they feel like they were probably victimized by it to a certain extent. It's to your point about Baylor, real quick, just to kind of bring this up. What Matt Rule did was remarkable, but then also look at the basketball programs. Men's and women's programs both ranked number 2 in the entire country.
The volleyball team was ranked number 1, made it to the Final Four.
They've recovered nicely.
Almost every athletic.
They have a lot of success down there.
Yeah.
You just hope that there are no more skeletons in the closet, because they've had their bout with that.
Every
a couple
10
of
years.
different,
We'll check in again in 2025. It seems to be every 10 years.
It's not funny. We mentioned it before, Alex Cora, the now Red Sox manager, was part of that Astros staff in 2017, and my father happens to be one of the 154 people that are watching right now, member. And he's a big Sox fan. He's been a Sox fan, ever since I was a little kid. And says he's very concerned right now about Alex Cora. And yeah, Dad, I think that is fair, because he says, is that fair? It's very fair, because from what Jeff Passan's reporting, the punishment that's going to be handed down for Alex Cora is going to be harsh. Whether or not that impacts the Boston Red Sox, I think, is still left to be determined, because Major League Baseball needs to investigate whether or not Boston was doing the same kinds of things, or if Cora started this, was involved in it. I don't know if he necessarily started this, but he was certainly heavily involved in it in Houston. Did he bring those tactics to Boston? I think that's what Rob Manfred and his team are still trying to figure out and sort out. But it won't surprise me if we know in the coming maybe 24 hours. I mean, it sounds like this is something that they're in the heart of right now.
Gosh, the city of Houston would love a different breaking news story to get the attention off of them right now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Cora's punishment is worse. Because if he's done it, he's been involved with 2 different franchises doing it. I can't imagine he's going to be in any better shape.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. All right, I think that's about all we got. I don't know if you have any other questions here. I can take a quick scan of the comments, see if we missed anything that we should get to. But I know I've got to get to work on a 5 o'clock hit.
You don't have anything else to do.
Got a couple of things that we got to do for real live television.
Cowboys season's over. You ain't got nothing.
Listen,
speaking of,
you're not kidding. It's going to be all Astros today, I think.
I think we had a request to fire Jerry Jones on here, so
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Off topic, but
guys, thanks so much for watching. We appreciate it, and we'll keep you updated on 4, 5, 6, and 10 tonight.